The evil of democracy. It is problematical to talk about evil if evil does not exist. It is difficult to not talk about evil even if we do not truly think evil exists. Evil represents the ultimate hate and in fact is almost impossible to define except by a tautological evil is evil. It is also difficult to talk about truth if truth is defined by expediency. If anything is absolute, it is truth. The idea of a truth that we can equate to opinion is an oxymoron. Truth as an approximation is essentially a contradiction. Which brings us to the possibly odd conclusion conveyed by a question: what evil is greater than the truth being turned into a lie? Democracy is just that, a mechanism for turning what is true into what is not true. People do not like to give up what they consider to be power. People are exercises in power. If all of our power vanished, our humanity would vanish. The most cherished power a human has is the power to choose. Some people think of it as the power of freedom. But despite our sentience and our human will, humans do not get to choose what the truth is. Nor do we get to pick what the outcome of our choices will be. The truth and the consequences of our choices are beyond our jurisdiction or control. Which brings us to democracy. Democracy is an illusion. It was born in a culture that practiced misogyny and old, white, men supremacy. Athenian democracy was in fact a bunch of rich old men debating what they would pay for. It was an oligarch devoted to ensuring self-interest was paramount whenever money was spent, because it was their money they were spending. But democracy is better than tyranny, the dissenter says. Agreed, but once the voter has voted and the ruler elected, what does your voice matter? Which brings us to the question of evil, because if there is no evil, democracy cannot be evil. However, if we claim evil does not exist, then neither democracy or tyranny is evil. It is either neither or both. If evil exists, there must be a right and wrong that evil offends. But somehow democracy is expected to nullify the influence of evil. If one man ruling as an autocrat is evil, what changes when a majority of voters elect him as the president? If we elect an evil man as governor, are we evil? Are we responsible for our misfortune? Democracy is grounded in what has to be the most absurd set of assumptions. Democracy assumes that the majority of people, when they make a choice, always choose right. The majority is able to make an honest assessment of the choices and make the right one. The minority are always in the wrong. A person chosen by the majority to rule them is always the best possible option. The power of a ruler is made legitimate by the volume of votes he receives, as if the truth and factuality was determined by what we the people agree to. Facts are not decided by parliamentary procedures or elections. The mob is just another form of tyranny. Experience tells us everything meaningful originated in one mind and required one person to decide that the entire human race was wrong in how they thought or did something. The truth is not determined by a popular vote and facts are not generated by a majority opinion. But democracy claims the decision of a majority tells us what ought to be. This can only be so if there is no countervailing force to popular opinion. We may vote to house the homeless, but someone has to build the homes. The majority can vote in the people's choice as president, but unless the people are willing and able to pay the costs of the programs he initiates, the president is nothing more than a child begging to be taken to a video arcade. Humans are obsessed with the ability to choose. We call it freedom. Democracy pretends all we have to do is decide which option to go with. Yet, year after year we find ourselves promoting policies and programs that cannot be funded. So, we embrace debt. You can want to write a book. You can choose to write the great screenplay. However, it is the person who puts in the hours, days, and effort who will produce a written work. As one wit remarked, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. The number of good ideas is endless, The number of people who give up everything to develop their idea into a commodity others can consume are few and far between. But democracy says the will of the people is supreme. But what does this mean? There is only one possible meaning. Democracy is the claim that the pie you made is not truly yours. Society has a claim on the pie and everything in society. There is one baker, but many mouths. This kind of expropriation, never mind explanation, seems wrong to many, but others think one person owning more pie than he can eat is wrong, when there are so many mouths to feed. Democracy fights capitalism, but under the guise of socialism. We all want to own our own pie, but share in the pies of others. The details of how we legitimize and fight for this is what gives us the beliefs of capitalism and socialism. Democracy is each side fighting over whose pie will be shared and how. But what if both viewpoints are right but for the wrong reason? The crime is not that society took the pie to feed the hungry, it is that they expropriated the labor that formed the pie. The crime is not that the owner of the pie wants to be paid for his pie, it is that he wants to be paid for something that was never his. The individual may not have an uncontested right to what he owns, but that does not mean the state has a greater claim. Maybe neither has a claim, and what the fight between left and right is a war between two robbers as to how to share up the spoils. We have a right to what we create, but we have no right to that which we did not create. This is a logical truth. Contravening this principle is an act of evil. But this principle poses a problem for the state, because the state creates nothing and has no right to anything created by those who create the wealth of the world. The law justifies the state's expropriations because the state makes and enforces the law. The state governs the nation through its law, but who gave the nation to the state that it should issue legal enactments to govern the people? Government requires the state to govern the disposition of assets within the state. In the end, all power comes down to avarice. Power without property is power exercised in a vacuum. Power and property is a chicken and egg problem. The dilemma is resolved when we understand the state is the law the state enacts. The state literally creates itself by law. In a tyranny, the state claims land and rules the people therein. In a democracy, the people claim the land and choose a ruler to rule them. But both options are illicit and result in someone laying claim to what they have no right to. There is no right to rule anything that you did not create. It is authorship that precedes proprietorship, and this dispensation of what we create is the only legitimate source of power. Democracy is as evil as a tyranny, and for the same reason. It is evil to take what does not belong to you. The only legitimate form of ownership is authorship. If you did not create it, you have no right to claim jurisdiction over it.